Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a global politics breaking news special concerning the Israeli strikes on Iran that have been taking place overnight. A huge aerial mission has been carried out by the Israelis with over 200 jets hitting nuclear sites and killing a number of military leaders and scientists as well, nuclear scientists. We'll see a whole range of bits of footage concerning this, and then question. Well, first of all, what's happened, why it's happened, what are the outcomes, what's the engagement with other nations around the world, the US and UK, for example, and where do we go from here? So last night, Israel launched a massive strike on Iran, says Anton Gerashchenko. It's reported that 2 reactors, an underground nuclear missile complex, a nuclear technology center were destroyed. 5 waves of strikes also destroyed military headquarters, command posts, ammunition and missile depots. This is a missile depot going off. Excuse the flashes. I've turned the noise down. It sounds like helicopter rotor blades going around, the sound of these detonating munitions. So it's quite a wide-ranging set of strikes. Senior military officials and more than 10 leading nuclear scientists have been eliminated. There are differing numbers being thrown around. In response, Iran has launched 100 drones back, which actually isn't a huge amount, and some people in Iran are calling for more than that as a response. We'll see whether there will be further response, I expect. So one more full-scale war started. It means that the world will divide its focus between 2 large wars. The descent into dark times gets deeper and deeper. We'll talk about that at the end. So a number of images coming out of nuclear sites being targeted, smoke coming up from both areas outside of urban zones, such as you can see on the left there, but also well within, say, Tehran and other places. I mean, some really significant strikes having taken place. We'll see as the dust settles, literally as the dust settles, what the damage will have been. As you can see there, an apartment building struck. That's one where a number of apartments around the target have been damaged or destroyed. So there will be civilian casualties, part of, I guess, the collateral that the Israelis are prepared to dole out in trying to strike key targets. Personnel here. Footage shows a moment when Israeli airstrikes on the Natanz nuclear facility in Iran took place. Meanwhile, Israeli sources have reported that Iran's launched about 100 drones in response. And yeah, so there's lots of imagery like this of plumes of smoke in the background and pretty significant explosions taking place out at these facilities. This is Natanz, which you'll probably hear a lot about in the news. Explosions happening. You'd assume that there are bunker buster bombs being used here, or missiles being used by the Israeli aviation as they hammer these key targets. So this is all about Iran continuing its nuclear enrichment program against, the better judgment, the Israelis would say, of the Israelis. Here we have some more footage of what looks like detonating munitions, similar to previously, those kind of flashes, but some significant clouds there. Explosions have taken place. Just some quite incredible footage, it has to be said. Of fairly dystopian sites there. I mean, that is you can tell also by the color of the smoke. The color, it tells you, that different things are burning or exploding, and the whiteness and almost orangeness of that compared to the dark black of these suggests different chemicals burning off there. And here we see an apartment block, so a residential area is struck. And you can imagine who might have been in there, but quite often you get collateral damage as well, as you can see from burning down below and several levels of that building on fire. So that is taking place. Here we can see a precision strike, the home of one of the assassinated Iranian commanders. Missile pierced the wall and then exploded is the claim here. But here is one where no other, well, probably few other people were affected in this. You can see some smoke having come up from the level below, and that strike might well have damaged 2 or 3 floors, but the modern capabilities of these munitions are pretty good, and they are fairly precise. More explosions shown there. That's what we were looking at earlier. As you can see, quite a few different facilities smoking in different ways. The dark black there, like we've seen in oil depots when they blow. There have been no strikes on energy infrastructure like oil, which is interesting, but it has caused a massive spike in the price of oil this morning, which is a real shame. We'll talk about that at the end. Here we have an Israeli video of the destruction of an Iranian air defense system. As part of the attacks, dozens of radars and surface-to-air missile launchers were destroyed, according to the Israeli Air Force, as you can imagine. Shahed-type adds that to Ynet News claim, according to a report in Axios, so all sorts of different news sites here, citing a senior Israeli official, claimed that the Mossad, their secret services, basically, led a series of covert sabotage operations deep inside Iran, in addition to airstrikes in Iran carried out by the Israeli Air Force. So also on the ground activities having taken place. Now the response is, and for those following the war in Ukraine, this is a common sight, isn't it? A Shahed-type drone going across the sky there from from Iran to Israel. About 100 of those, as mentioned. That isn't too many, and the Israelis should be able to deal with that. There are claims that the British and American planes aren't active, they haven't been requested to support Israel. But then I've seen another claim that US and British planes are indeed helping to shoot down drones and whatnot. Again, we'll come on to that in a wee while, just find out what is happening. Well, actually, that's what is happening and has happened. We'll then find a little bit more detail about those activities. But first, let's see why this happened. So, wide-ranging attack on Iranian nuclear scientists, high-ranking personnel, missile factories and nuclear installations took place last night. The head of the Republican Guard appears to have been killed. Exact damage will no doubt be revealed later. This comes the day after the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, said that Iran was now in breach of previous nuclear agreements and now had 600 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. That means it's not good enough for a weapon, but it would take very little time or very little to take the material to 98% to make it usable. Sadly, this is likely to spike the oil price, which will help Russia, at least temporarily. Iran has little that it can use to strike back at Israel's defenses, but it will no doubt try. The US made it clear it had nothing to do with the attack. Israel has its own satellite for targeting. Israel is likely to find itself on its own this time if Iran attacks, and that's really the key question. So Trump has said that he was aware of the attacks, but the idea is that the US didn't assist the Israelis in this strike. In fact, they may not have been up for the strike, if you like. We'll talk about that when we go through this Bloomberg article in a second. Shahed-type adds, the IDF says, so the Israeli Defense Forces says, that in recent months, accumulated intelligence information has provided evidence that the Iranian regime is approaching the point of no return. So that's the quote. So that's why they've done it. The enriched uranium that the Iranians are supposed to be continuing to produce is, that's over the tipping point for the Israelis. So they've taken out the scientists and some of these sites, as well as some key military targets too. However, says Shahed-type, in March, the US intelligence said it assessed Iran was, quote, not building a nuclear weapon. So the language of the point of no return echoes a framing that Ehud Barak used to use in 2012, the idea that Iran's program would enter a zone of immunity. It's a vague term and it's not clear what it means exactly. It is true that Iran's nuclear program and its enrichment capacity and breakout time in particular has been growing considerably, as we have tracked, see below in The Economist. This does not mean Iran was making decisive steps to what Netanyahu called weaponization. Occam's razor suggests, says Shashank Joshi, although I always think it's a bit of a bastardization of the technical understanding of the term of Occam's razor. But anyway, Occam's razor suggests that this attack has happened not because of fresh intelligence about Iranian activity, but because Israel saw an opportunity. Iran and militia allies are weak, nuclear talks were faltering, and the IAEA just censured Iran yesterday. Preventative but not preemptive. Occam's razor, just as a point here, suggests that the simplest theory is preferred when both theories have, or competing theories have, the same explanatory power. But what Shashank Joshi here is saying is that one theory has more explanatory power than the other, and so therefore, yeah, it's just a bastardization of the term. And anyway, that aside, Bloomberg reports that Israel strikes Iran's nuclear sites and warns that more attacks are to come. So, as we heard, explosions were heard and seen across Tehran and Natanz, home of one of Iran's key nuclear sites, and other cities, according to the local and social media. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel had, quote, struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program, as well as senior atomic scientists and military commanders. Iranian state television reported that the head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Hossein Salami, and Armed Forces Chief of Staff Mohammad Bagheri. So that's really quite high people taken out there, were both killed in Israeli strikes. And of course, that's going to want the Iranians to reply in kind. Now, I was listening to an Iranian this morning on the radio saying, look, we've been protesting for some time. Not everyone in Iran is particularly happy with the government. But when things like this happen, they rally around a flag. And the Iranians will feel that, just like the Israelis are claiming this is kind of existential for the Israelis, there will be in that sense with the Iranians as well. And they will pull together and demand fairly universally demand payback for this, and they'll get behind their government. And Netanyahu said the operation, quote, will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. Some people saying maybe 2 weeks. Channel 12 reporting 2 weeks this could be happening for. The opening strikes were, quote, very successful, he said, adding that Israelis would need to prepare for a retaliation and prepare to spend long periods in shelters. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said Israel will, quote, pay a very heavy price and should expect a severe response from Iran's armed forces. A spokesperson for Iran's armed forces said US assets in the region could also be targeted. So this is where it gets, even more tense, is that the Iranians are going to be saying, right, the US is behind this or is helping Israel. The US is kind of denying that. But if the US gets pulled into this conflict, then obviously it becomes a wider conflict. Trump was trying to rely on diplomacy. That didn't work. This war, of course, would never have happened if Trump had been president. What's that? Sorry. Oh, Trump is president. It's happening. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize. This is happening. The Americans might get pulled in. You could argue that, and I didn't cast too much harsh opinion on the Americans making sure that, 20,000 APKWS fuses, these kind of, some are claiming missiles, some are claiming fuses, but whatever, 20,000, let's say, missiles were redirected from Ukraine to the Middle East. These are missiles that can shoot down drones, could well be very useful for the Americans right now. So there's a sense that they knew what was coming and just want to be as tooled up as possible in the region. But as you can see, a number of targets there on that map. I don't know exactly what was targeted other than Tehran, Natanz, and a few other places. Netanyahu's government ordered the strikes in apparent defiance of US President Donald Trump. So this is a key part. Who had said on Thursday he didn't want Israel to attack Iran. He said his administration remained committed to a diplomatic resolution to the Iran nuclear issue. Trump had also suggested he didn't think an attack was imminent, and then of course it was, but I'm sure ahead of time he was made aware. You know, the quote is Iran, quote, Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb and we are hoping to get back to the negotiating table. We will see. There are several people in leadership that will not be coming back. Fox News cited Trump as saying during a phone interview between himself and Brett Baer. Now, that's interesting. There are several people in leadership that will not be coming back. I presume he's talking about the Iranian leadership that have been killed, or is he saying that he's sacking some of his leadership for not? I don't know. So the two countries were meant to meet for their next round of talks on Sunday in Oman. It's unclear if these negotiations will happen. Oman's government, in the first comments from a Gulf state, said Israel's actions were reckless and would undermine regional security. US was not involved in the strike, said Marco Rubio. And there are, of course, risks of plunging the region at large into more of a conflict. Israel's alarming decision to launch airstrikes on Iran is a reckless escalation that risks igniting regional violence, Senator Jack Reed, top Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee, said in a statement. He said Trump and other nations need to push for diplomatic de-escalation before the crisis spirals further out of control. And there'll be people sitting on both sides of this. Probably many of you watching, some of you will be supportive of Israel strikes on Iran here, stopping them from further enrichment if it's successful, and kind of decapitating some of the leadership and some of the knowledge base for doing this. And there are others that will be claiming that this is entirely reckless and ill-advised. My personal opinion is I'm not really sure what I feel about this in terms of, because it's very difficult, because my evaluations would be based on, well, it depends what the outcomes are, and then you work back to say whether it's worthwhile. But it's very difficult to predict outcomes with a degree of certainty. And so the intention here is probably, the intention is right, as in everyone wants to stop Iran creating nuclear missiles, right? So, that's what's going on here. Then that's a noble intention, I think. Is this the right way about it? I don't know yet. So, following the confirmed death of Iranian Chief of General Staff Mohammad Bagheri, Iran's supreme leader has reportedly appointed someone already to replace him. These are the confirmed kills according to no reports. This is, actually according to an Israeli released list. So the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Chief Salami, Chief of Staff General Bagheri, IRGC Commander Rashid, ex-nuclear chief Abbasi Davani, laser isotopes expert Teranchi, and others on top of that. Indeed, Iran's Tasnim has said that Israel's attack has resulted in the death of 6 Iranian nuclear scientists. They say the Zionist entity should expect a heavy punishment. The strong hand of the Islamic Republics, Islamic Republics, a military power will not let up. The criminal entity planned for itself a bitter fate and a future full of torment. So they're particularly happy. Basically the update, or the kind of, best synopsis can be summarized like this. So Israel launched an attack aimed at dozens of targets, including nuclear facilities. Israel's Prime Minister has called this, by the way, Operation Rising Lion, said it would take many days, rolling back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. So they're seeing it as existential. Netanyahu said one target was a Natanz nuclear facility. Israeli military spokesman told Reuters that 100 drones were heading to Israel, and we're in for a rough few hours. Israeli airports have been closed. Revolutionary Guard commanders have been killed in the strikes. Iran's TV has reported that there have been a number of fatalities from Israel's attacks, as you can imagine, including the death of nuclear scientists, a couple mentioned there, and that Ayatollah Khamenei said Israel will receive a harsh punishment after its attack on Iran early on Friday. Now, the US, as it says here, Israel's main supporter, will be held responsible for the consequences of Israel's adventurism, according to Iran's foreign ministry. So, the US might well be drawn into this. We shall see. So on and so forth. So that's pretty much where we are at the moment. According to Fox News, President Trump said he was aware of Israel's strikes before they happened. He gave me a quote. He said, "Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. We're hoping to get back to the negotiating table." Fox News quoted Trump as saying, and unfortunately, oil prices have shot up. Here is a claim that they're 13% up, and that is up to $78 a barrel. That's a real shame because as far as Ukraine's concerned, really they need to be around $50 to $60 for Russia to be in trouble. Shooting back up to there means that the Russians are going to be making profits that can underwrite their war project. And that is definitely one of the bad ramifications of this of these strikes by Israel. So that does help Russia considerably. Now, the Iranians have raised the red flag of vengeance over the Jam Quran mosque in Iran's Qom. It was previously raised after the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. So this is quite a rare occurrence, and it means that the Iranians are up for a bit of a response to this. Now, from the US point of view, it's going to be interesting to see if they get involved with helping out Israel more overtly, such as with planes. The same with the UK. Now, it's been interesting from a UK point of view. Sorry to get a bit UK-centric here, but our government has been increasingly putting pressure on Israel because of the horrific things that have been taking place in Gaza, to the point where several politicians have been sanctioned by the UK government. And our foreign ministry called what Israel is doing in Gaza appalling recently. Same can be said for Australia. A number of other nations have been heaping pressure onto Israel. Israel don't appear to care too much, but we are certainly becoming a lot more critical of Israel's actions in the UK, but we still call Israel an ally. And I was actually listening to, before this all happened yesterday, a discussion on the radio talking about how there is this odd tension there where we are being really overtly a lot more harsh to Israel, but they're still our mates type thing. And this then, I guess, it makes me wonder how the UK is going to react. Are we going to send up planes? I mean, planes might already be in the air right now. What does that say about our foreign ministry's position on Israel if we then go and help out? And it could be that actually there are strategic needs in the region that are greater at the moment than our desire to see Israel sort of punished or constrained in their actions over Gaza. So Gaza is a different thing to Iran right now. These are two kind of separate conflicts, if you like. So we, on the one hand, could be like, don't do that in Gaza, that's horrific, but we're going to help you take out some Iranian drones because actually the larger strategic needs in the region necessitate the UK supporting Israel in that context. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's interesting that the UK sanctioned two far-right Israeli ministers over monstrous Gaza comments. And that's joining in with Canada, Australia, New Zealand and Norway in freezing assets of Bagheri and Smotrich. These two are really horrible. These are far-right extremists in the government of Israel, right? These are the two of two of the bad guys. These are bad guys, Bagheri and Smotrich. Not a fan of them at all, right? And they've long been that way inclined. They are, if you listen to their rhetoric, it is overtly genocidal, right? So they have genocidal rhetoric, and it is no surprise to me that a number of countries are coming out and sanctioning these two people, which is a way of kind of saying to Israel, no, that sucks, but without saying it to the whole government, and just honing in on two individuals and putting more culpability on certain people rather than the entire nation or government. But it's interesting that the US has come out and criticised the UK decision to sanction those two ministers. So the US has been sitting, is much more comfortable, I think, certainly for the Republican government, to be supportive of Israel, even when they are so overtly extreme in their ideology as well as their activities and actions in Gaza. The US has been uncomfortable with what Israel has continued to do. But on the other hand, when you've got people like Stephen Miller, who is a Jew of Belarusian descent, who is really extreme on the right and has been called out for some horrific rhetoric and ideology concerning ICE and the deportation of immigrants. In the US, actually, there's a lot of similarity between, say, Stephen Miller and Bagheri and Smotrich, and so you can understand why the US might criticize the UK for coming down hard on those people. So some really interesting dynamics going on concerning Israel at the moment, and different nations' approach to whether they support or don't the Israeli actions, and who in the Israeli government are most responsible, outside of obviously Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay, so that's enough from me. You hopefully have a bit of an idea of what's going on. Huge strikes taking place. There will likely be a lot of international leaders coming out and giving their comments on this. Cancelled flights. IAEA chief urges all parties to show restraint. France's foreign minister urges restraint from Israel. Quote, we call on all sides to exercise restraint and avoid any escalation that could undermine regional stability. Turkey urges Israel to halt aggressive actions. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of call for de-escalation over the next hours and days. But I wonder whether Iran's limited response says anything. So 100 drones is far fewer in terms of drones and missiles than Iran had dealt previously in when they were attacking Israeli airfields and whatnot, and the UK, French, American, and even Jordanian fighters were helping Israel then. But it could be that actually they just need a bit of time to get their ballistic missiles into the launchers and ready to fire. So the drones could be the easy first option, and we might see a much greater Iranian response in the coming days. I mean, that is what happened previously, where they waited a wee while for their response, if I recall correctly, because they had to get everything ready, and then they sent these missiles and drones against Israel. Now, I wonder whether Israel is going to be looking right across Iran at the movements of all of these launchers and whatnot, and whether Israel might then bring out a sort of proactive strike against the Iranians to stop them from doing that. Who knows? So the next week is going to be incredibly fragile and volatile in the region, and I'll let you know what's going on as much as I can. Obviously, we're still concentrating on Ukraine and Russia. In the meantime, take care. Speak soon.